There is evidence to suggest from Caesar's own writings that his parley on Wimbledon Common with British factions hostile to Cassivellaunus may well have had some link with a dispute connected with the institution of elected monarchy. It is well within the realms of possibility that the ancient rituals associated with London's stone, a fragment of which can still be found in the wall of the Bank of China, were in some way a half-remembered remnant of some long-forgotten monarchical system, itself electoral in nature. As in the case of Hammersmith's Galena Road, the stone is aligned with a number of key ecclesiastical edifices, including the Church of St Dunstan in the west, which connects it with Fulham, Glastonbury and Kingston, as well as the dome of St Paul's. The fact that St Augustine's original Church of St Paul's, the medieval successor to which was destroyed in the Great Fire, only to be superseded by Wren's restoration masterpiece, was constructed on the remains of an ancient pagan temple, has led to a great deal of speculation with respect to London stone's original significance. A clue to its ultimate Saxon origin, however, was that it stood in the shadow of the Church of St Swithin, a saint with a multitude of links to King Alfred's West Saxon capital of Winchester. Although some have sought to link it to Kingston's King's Stone, it is of a completely different material, and almost certainly dates to the West Saxon retaking of London from invading Viking marauders. Some of the more outlandish theories regarding the stone connect it with Stonehenge, an idea originally espoused in E.O. Gordon's book Prehistoric London, which compares the relationship between London's stone and St Paul's to that between Stonehenge itself and the famous heel or sunstone. Although at first glance it is tempting to imagine this magnificent 17th century edifice standing over the site of some vanished stone circle, the archaeological evidence that is so far available to us does not support this theory. It is, however, significant that the early medieval chroniclers, such as Geoffrey of Monmouth, were sympathetic to the idea of Stonehenge itself being in some way connected with the ancient institution of electoral sacral kingship. In Geoffrey's History of the Kings of Britain, Ambrosius Aurelianus, Uther Pendragon and Constantine III, all elected kings in their turn, are buried within the circle. In Shakespeare's Henry VI, the Sussex rebel Jack Cade declares himself king at London Stone by striking the block with his staff. An apparent native of East Sussex, the hamlet of Cade Street lies not so very far from Wilmington's Long Man, whose pair of gigantic sighting rods may betray a prehistoric origin to Cade's strange and curious ritual. The earthworks that surmount the Long Man's head are themselves aligned to St Dunstan's old stomping ground of nearby Mayfield, and are likewise aligned with the Priory of Wilmington itself. The geomantic interconnectedness between ancient mound, landscape lay and medieval church parallels that which we found at Putney, Fulham and Wimbledon nearby. There is reason to suppose that Shakespeare's Henry VI was influenced by the Elizabethan playwright and spy Christopher Marlowe, whose secret knowledge of these ancient rites may have been a contributory factor in his murder. Whatever the truth, the ancient ritual landscapes of Sussex seem peopled with the same historical characters as those of Fulham, Kingston and beyond. At nearby Alfriston, another convergence of ley lines at the village Mercat Cross stands close to an inn sign that points to an ancient association with St George and the Dragon. Is this a link between the Long Man himself, nearby Wilmington Camp, and the celebrated Dragon Mound at Uffington Castle? According to E.O. Gordon, the 19th century Chartists, who were instrumental in the creation of our modern democratic system through the medium of parliamentary reform, used a similar mound at Kennington Park for their 1848 convening on account of its ritual significance. Since then, the park has been a major meeting place for political gatherings, most notably the poll tax rally that brought down the Thatcher government. But this is not the only place where such rights can be re-invoked.
Here too at Parliament Hill, people were permitted to indulge in free speech and to exercise their ancient rights of assembly, and this pillar marks the spot where such freedoms could be enjoyed.
Again, we are amidst the remains of an ancient ritual landscape, directly aligned with St Paul's and apparently used as an assembly point for parliamentary forces during the English Civil War. The link with Cromwell suggests some kind of direct connection between all of these ancient ritual landscapes in turn, through the historical characters with whom each of them is in some way associated. Boadicea's legendary burial mound here on Parliament Hill appears to have influenced the siting of her famous statue in the shadow of Big Ben, and links our parliamentary system with the lost Molmutine laws of the ancient British kings. From what we know of Boadicea, she too appears to have been a manifestation of a considerably less restrictive society in which women were often the equals and indeed mistresses of men than that which was to prevail in later times, particularly after the establishment of mainstream Christianity in Britain. Close to where her statue now stands, an ancient moot hill similar to the one that once stood in Kennington Park and formerly known as Tot Hill, shows evidence of another prehistoric link with the mother of modern democracies. Commemorated in the naming of nearby Tot Hill Street, it provides proof of a link between the West Saxon monarchy with its semi-electoral system, rooted in the Old English Witan or Council of Nobles, which has passed on certain elements of the coronation rituals still enacted here at Westminster Abbey, and the primitive pre-Roman democratic system which preceded it. These connections with the oldest of all parliaments point to the origins of our modern democracy as being revivalist in nature, and to it being considerably more ancient than one might surmise from the outward architectural facade of the modern Palace of Westminster. The Celtic and early English precursors of this relatively modern institution were a kind of cross between Chartist convention and royal ceremonial in their nature. Perhaps then it is something more than coincidence that the veteran anti-war protester Brian Hoare should have chosen Westminster's Parliament Square as the site of his round-the-clock anti-Iraq war blanket protest. In the footsteps of such long-standing democratic traditions as the Greenham Common Peace Camp, Brian's singular stand has not only entered the history books, but, like Astrid Seidower's bronze statue of Sir Winston Churchill close by, is now a work of art, thanks to Tate Modern exhibitor and Turner Prize-winning artist Mark Wallinger, and all this in a continually evolving ritual landscape aligned to a prehistoric mound similar to those that we have encountered previously both at nearby Kennington Park and at Uffington, Putney and Wilmington Camp, not forgetting Caesar's Camp on Wimbledon Common into the bargain. Thus the 16th century leveller debates at Putney Church, intended to decide the outcome of the English Civil War, themselves the forerunner of the great Chartist Assembly of 1848, can be seen as part of a single evolving strand of political development, and, like Oliver Cromwell's own ancestry, an integral part of the ancient bardic tradition which Iolo Morganwg likewise sought to re-establish. This considered, it is perhaps significant that amongst Cromwell's many perhaps fabulous ancient Welsh ancestors we find King Lud, himself an apparent inspiration to the aptly named machine-breaking Luddites of the Industrial Revolution. The heavy-handed removal of Brian Hoare's monumental exhibition of anti-war propaganda by police invoking anti-terror legislation echoes that in which the ancient rites of the previously suppressed Stonehenge People's Free Festival were swept away by a political establishment unconcerned with the intricacies of bardic rite. The way in which the ruthless suppression of the festival has since been followed by such a heavy police presence leading up to and over the annual summer solstice provides affirmation of the continuously sung folk-punk New Age leveller lyric that it's more than the stones that they're guarding. In certain places this all-pervading police presence has likewise been extended to other similar sites, where individuals and groups have attempted to enact their own peaceful solstice gatherings, unmolested by an overtly authoritarian and overly draconian constabulary, largely ignorant of the existence of these ancient rites, and themselves the inheritors of the 18th century Philistinism that destroyed so many of the Avebury megalithic stones that Stukely sought to document.